What's going on YouTube? Mr. Wheels here with another episode of Sports Talk. Today's topic, professional wrestling and whether professional wrestling can be considered a legitimate sport and whether the wrestlers themselves are in fact athletes. Now, I've grown up watching wrestling, and I absolutely believe that wrestling should be considered a sport, and when I say wrestling, I mean professional wrestling. And absolutely, the wrestlers are athletes. It takes a tremendous amount of athleticism and ability to be able to do what these men and women do for a living. And I've got some points here to back up how I feel. Now, as it pertains to the WWE, they're probably the exception to professional wrestling, given the fact that the wrestlers in WWE are not allowed to be referred to by the commentators as wrestlers. They have to be referred to as sports entertainers or superstars. And I'm going to put a link in the description box. It's a Joey Styles shoot interview, which means it's not scripted. When he quit WWE, he goes off on exactly what I just talked about, wrestlers being athletes, and how they can't be referred to that in WWE. It's really good. It's about 3 minutes long, and he actually criticizes the fans as well. It's really good, so check it out. Now, moving on to other federations that do consider themselves professional wrestling and keep the idea of professional wrestling being a sport alive is TNA, Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. These guys have done some really innovative things with a six-sided ring, and have had some tremendous wrestlers in their organization, and they always refer to themselves as professional wrestlers. And of course, there's also Ring of Honor, which is like a step up from being on the really low end of the independent wrestling circuit. The matches that CM Punk had in Ring of Honor with Colt Cabana and guys like Chris Hero before he was in WWE were absolutely awesome, brutal matches, true professional wrestling matches. And I encourage you to, if you're a true wrestling fan, check those matches out, because that's what keeps the sport of professional wrestling alive. WWE is really the exception. They really are just sports entertainment, or whatever you want to call them. And that brings me to amateur wrestling. Now, I've been told that, amateur wrestling is the only form of wrestling that can be considered a sport. And I don't really believe that. When Kurt Angle got to WWE, he said that professional wrestling was really the only platform where he could apply his craft and let the whole world see it, other than the Olympics. And at the time, this was back in 2000, UFC was not at the height of popularity that it is now. And, even with UFC, wrestling is a discipline in UFC and other mixed martial arts, but it's usually behind Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or Muay Thai, kickboxing, boxing, the list goes on and on. So the other thing that a lot of people say about professional wrestling, other than it being fake and scripted and choreographed, yes, I will get to all of that, and I'm not going to do the whole Ready to Rumble, wrestling's not fake thing. I'm not saying it's fake, I'm not saying it's not fake, but a lot of people say that wrestling is just a form of entertainment. Well, if people would realize that all sports are forms of entertainment. When I go to a hockey game or a baseball game, basketball game, football, whatever, I'm there to be entertained, and that's what athletes do. That's part of their job, is to entertain people. And wrestlers are no different. Now, getting into the choreographing and pre-planning of matches. it's mainly the finishes in professional wrestling that are choreographed, and with relation to their promos, the talking they do, that's scripted as well, unless it's a shoot promo, which, like I said, I'm going to put a shoot promo of Joey Styles in the description box. When it's a shoot promo, it's not scripted at all. And, yes, there are predetermined outcomes in professional wrestling, but to a degree, all forms of sport have different degrees of pre-planning. And take NFL football, for example, every single play, whether it be on offense, defensive, special teams, all of those plays are pre-drawn up, pre-planned. The difference is that you don't always get the desired outcome in football and other sports, and I guess that might be an argument for distinguishing pro wrestling from other sports, but I digress. And I think the mainstream media is a big reason why pro wrestling isn't considered by the masses to be a sport. The mainstream media is really they'll take any chance they can get to bash wrestling, and I'm not going to get into the deaths in pro wrestling and all the steroid controversies and other things going on, because that's a whole other topic altogether. But what I will say is the mainstream media doesn't follow wrestling on a regular basis, and most of the time they really don't know what they're talking about. If you want educated opinions on pro wrestling, you either got to go on YouTube or stick to PWI or other wrestling publications, or listen to wrestling fans like myself. And in terms of wrestlers being athletes, again, like I said, what these men and women do takes years and years and years of practice and perfecting their craft. Like any other athlete, they need to, be professionally trained. And, I found that a sign of respect for these wrestlers being athletes is when other athletes from other sports sit ringside. You see a lot of it at WrestleMania these days. Other celebrities and athletes will come to a show, and for instance, Mike Tyson, when he did his part in WrestleMania, he said the reason he did it was because he's a huge fan. And entire football teams have been seen at Monday Night Raw, the Baltimore Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Chicago Bears, baseball players like Derek Jeter and Wade Boggs, all been seen at ringside. When the Green Bay Packers won the Super Bowl, Clay Matthews putting the World Heavyweight Championship belt on Aaron Rodgers' shoulders is a sign that other athletes watch wrestling and are wrestling fans because of the athletic ability that wrestlers have. And I think wrestlers really need a lot more credit than they're given. Now, I want to lastly talk about the blood in professional wrestling and the moves that they do. First off, the bleeding. Let's take WWE for example, because they've had periods of time where they haven't used blood because they've been PG. Let's point that out first of all. But the blood in any professional wrestling organization, at least it used to not be done with blood packs. What they do is they take a small razor that they either put in their wrist tape, or the ref will give them a razor, and they make an incision right here, right above the right the side of their brow. And why they do that is because it bleeds profusely and there's no scar. But there's a lot of people out there that think the blood is fake and they use blood packs. I've heard reporters say that. Again, mainstream reporters who really don't know what they're talking about. And I just wanted to clear up that when there is blood in professional wrestling, the chances are it's 100% real. It's just that they always cut themselves in the same spot because there's no scarring. And that brings me to the moves and the bumps that they take in the ring. You know, and their moves may be choreographed, but the impact of what they do and the danger of what they do is very real. And if their timing is off just slightly, you know, there's risk for serious injury. I actually encourage you to check out, it's a documentary, I know it's on Netflix, it's called Head Games. It's about concussions in sports. It's narrated by Christopher Nowinski. He was a former professional wrestler and football player. He got 2 serious concussions when he was wrestling in WWE, just from basic moves. One was just a routine spot that they do just from hitting the mat. And he said, to back up my point, that's how I know that their timing needs to be immaculate, because it was him that said if their timing is off just slightly, you know, the chance that they're going to injure themselves is very high. And I've heard an interview that Chris Jericho did a number of years ago where he described professional wrestling and wrestlers as being stuntmen without a safety net, because there is no second chance to perform their move. When they screw up, people know it. But all of this doesn't take away the fact that they have a lot of athletic ability and they deserve to be considered athletes. You know, I'm not trying to force people to like professional wrestling. You either do or you don't. And, you know, let me know what you think. You know, if you're a professional wrestling fan and you like my point of view, you know, slap the like button. I would really appreciate it. And give me a comment. Let me know your point of view on things. But really, the reason I did this was just to give props to what professional wrestlers do and encourage people to, even though they may not really like professional wrestling, just to give it enough respect that, you know, it does take a tremendous amount of ability to do what these people do, and they deserve to be considered athletes, and wrestling should be considered a sport. So I will see you on the next episode, and take care.